Chapter 1, Cape Cod Genesis, Part 2. So Budd Hopkins' friends began to tell him about their UFO sightings, and he would go to dinner parties, and he would get like somebody at the dinner party just to like mention something about some UFO sighting or something like that. And he talks about back then there was like a stigma about talking about UFOs. People would think you're crazy if you were talking about that stuff. But because he was an artist, that kind of gave him like a pass. Because if you're like a doctor or like a investment broker or some other type of professional and you began talking about UFOs, it could like hurt you. Like it could like damage your credibility, and it could like damage your career. So there was a sighting by Betty Bodian, which was a friend of Bud's, and she saw a white globe in the sky. And this was on Provincetown Harbor. And Budd Hopkins was not that interested in the sighting. But then Dan and Jan Boynton told Budd Hopkins about a sighting that involved a white light blinking oddly over the bay. And it was the same time and location as the previous sighting by Betty Bodian. And something interesting was that Dan and Jan Boynton were owners of some newspaper, and they had photo equipment in the back of the seat of their car. And when they saw the UFO, they couldn't bother to like take out a camera and take a picture of it. And there were more UFO witnesses. Within a 6-week period, there were like 4 more witnesses. And one was from some cops, and another one was by a woman and her teenage daughter. Another one was from a man that called the Coast Guard. And the other one was from David Lynn and Bess Schuler near their property in Truro. When David and Bess saw the sighting, they thought that there was some fire below the top of a hill. But they kept looking at the sighting and they realized that it was not a fire. It was a large circular light that was either resting or slightly above the ground. David took out his binoculars and he saw that the globe contained windows. They thought the sighting was unusual, but then they decided that maybe it was some type of house that they haven't seen before near the area, and that there was some foliage or some many plants that were covering the house. Then Bess realized that there was no house near the spot when there was the odd light, so the house explanation was not valid for this sighting. And that area didn't have many houses around. There were like 2. So Budd decides to drive over to David and Beth's house to do some investigation. And as he gets there, he sees a woman and a teenage girl that were driving but that were around, and he decides to ask them questions about this sighting. And it was a woman, her teenage daughter, and their son. And then the woman begins describing that she saw something, like it was Saturday night and she couldn't fall asleep. And then she decided to read, and it was like 1:30 in the morning, and a light began to shine in her bedroom window, and the light was moving towards the bay. The light was very bright, white, and very odd, and that area was very isolated. She went to the stairs to call her daughter, and the daughter awakened, and she saw the light stream pass through her windows, and the light was like kind of like circling the house. And the girl came downstairs to her mother's room just in time to see the light come by again. And this time the light was going counterclockwise, like circling around the house. And it was soundless. Budd Hopkins had a theory that it was automobile headlights from a car driving by. So he decided to experiment. He drove around and flickered his headlights and high beams in many different ways. Around the houses. But then the other people say, yeah, like we didn't saw your car. They never saw the other people, like the mom and David and Bess. They didn't see any lights generated from Budd Hopkins' car. So that explanation about that weird light being the headlights of a car was just not a good explanation. So within a week, Budd Hopkins learned about a third incident. It was a psychotherapist and his wife, and this was also close to the David and Beth's house. So a psychotherapist and his wife went to bed and took a nap after dinner. And they awakened and they noticed that there was like a full moon shining in the sky. But the thing is that the moon was not visible from their current location. So they went to the front of their house to brew some coffee, and the moon was visible from the living room windows. They drank coffee, returned to their bedroom, and they were still looking at the global light that was still there. Neither said anything about that, and they decided to go back to the living room. They went back to the bedroom, saw the weird light, and went back to the living room again. They went back to their bedroom for the third time, but the weird light was no longer there. And then they went back to sleep. Neither mentioned the incident to the other the next morning. And they thought that the fact that they didn't mention anything was kind of weird. It was kind of like out of sight, out of mind, or out of conversation, out of existence.